Well, thank you, Chair. What I'm planning to cover today is uh, the technical issues have been covered. So what I'm going to do is to encapsulate and give more of a cyberspace flavor to it, and just throw a very grim picture that how serious things have turned out over last maybe a couple of decades, since when we all got used to something which is called as the internet, or what we in cognitive space call it as cyberspace. So if you look at the way digital world today is, every one of us is connected, and earlier the things were difficult. Earlier you were supposed to have a laptop or a computer and a specific or a particular connection to the internet, so that you can access at a specific given point of time at a specific place. But along with the very onset of mobile platforms, the onset of smartphones, the decreasing cost of acquisition, the decreasing cost of subscription, what has happened is all of us carry communication along with us. We are connected to internet 24 by 7 as we speak, as we talk, as we walk, and most important, as we sleep also we are connected. So if you look at the global population, almost 54% of us are connected to internet. Along with that, 44% of us have active presence on social media platforms. 64% of us have access to mobile phone users. So the thing is, a lot of issues which arise out of lack of education, lack of basic cyber hygiene, impacts a lot of things which we call as national security, or we call as internal security. But before we move forward, let's spend some time on how these figures are in South Asia per se. So even if you look at the case of Bhutan, India and Sri Lanka, which are close to the global standards, but other South Asian countries still are way below in terms of connectivity. If you look at in the terms of percentage of populations who are connected to internet. However, if you look at the malware infection index, which Microsoft publishes every year. This particular snapshot is from 2016, although it's a little old, but it points out to that out of 7 of us, 4 countries in South Asia are on the top 19 list. So Pakistan, Nepal, India and Sri Lanka are one of the topmost Asian Pacific countries who are facing malware infections to a higher certain degree. And if you look at the newest trends in the cyberspace, or what we call as cyber threats, are about related to cloud computing, to social media platforms, social engineering, hacks using social media platforms. You have threats coming in the form of ransomware, which even the developed countries like the UK faced last year in February. We have a lot of attacks now coming in the form of cryptocurrencies, which are the new bedrock of financial systems, as some people claim. Along with that, a lot of malwares creeping in from pen drives, from your email attachments. So that's how the wider picture is. But if you look at and try to extrapolate this particular problem of cybersecurity, or the problem of cyberspace in security context, South Asia has got its own unique problems, and we have been discussing them all throughout last 2 days. We had a 4th speaker who pointedly brought one or a few of these problems into limelight. But if you look at broadly, South Asia has been politically very volatile region. We do have outstanding issues of terrorism, civil wars, insurgencies. We have quite a high rate of technology adoption, although the levels of awareness and education are quite low. We do have this weakness of legal frameworks, and we certainly have some unstable democratic institutions, and a lot of experiments with democracy have been happening in our surroundings, which leads or which paves way for a lot of things which could be done using social media, or which could be done using cyberspace. So let's come on to one of the very nascent, not nascent, but one of the very prone areas, which is banking. And I just ran through a search of what kind of attacks in South Asia we have faced if we speak of banking sector. So first one is the Bangladesh Heist, which was in Feb 2016, and which led to a loss of close to $81 million by exploiting I would say a very small vulnerability in the SWIFT system. So SWIFT system is something which all the international banks, which banks use for international transactions. Moreover, we did have a problem somewhere in September 2015, where 3.2 million cards had to be blocked, and 6 of the Indian banks were impacted. The story does not end. Quite recently, in I think February, we had the case of Cosmos Bank. 94 crores were siphoned off from international transactions. we have in November, first week, Pakistan also faced a massive attack on its banking system, where close to 19,000 debit card details were compromised, and they were put on dark web for sale. And the cost for one card was close to around $110 on the dark web market. Uh, the thing is, banking sector, if you see, because of its close association with monetary gains, it's been vulnerable all throughout, and cyberspace has added one of the very nascent dimensions to it. And one more point I want to bring in here is the case of cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies is something which is a very novel application of blockchain into banking system, or banking and financial services system. And if you look at the way the cryptocurrencies valuation has gone up, now it's already it has fallen, although, but the way it went all the way up over the last 1 decade is something which is astonishing. And a new kind of crimes which are a continuation of traditional crimes, but cryptocurrencies add a whole new dimension because they don't leave any track. And on top of that, you just cannot get hold of someone even though transaction has taken place. So it's a bit complicated in that sense. And on top of that, now because of this much of valuation within the cryptocurrencies themselves, malwares, we have very, I would say, very pinpointed malwares which try to get hold of these vulnerabilities within your browser, within your wallets, and try to siphon off money from the cryptocurrency account itself. This again could be interlaced with the rising threat from terrorism. Some of the terrorist outfits do accept donations, or do accept money in the form of cryptocurrencies to as part of their fundraising campaigns. They have been exploiting cyberspace day in and day out for their recruitment purposes, and propaganda is one of the very prominent things which terror outfits like ISIS kind of mastered over the years. Even if you look at the case of Jamaat-ud-Dawa, they do have a dedicated team which is called as the social media team. And they have been conducting workshops in Islamabad about spreading more awareness how social media platforms could be used to extend their political aims, or could be used to extend their reach in countries, which specifically India being targeted. We did have one of the few very serious instances of interference in electoral processes. So the US faced it, the French faced it, both in their last elections, in presidential elections. The Brexit still is under a lot of, I would say, a lot of criticism because of the way social media was used to manipulate the people's opinion in the case of Brexit. And social media has been a very soft target in this particular case. And based on one report, because Oxford has researched a lot in this space, and based on their report, 18 elections in 2017 were tampered with. So this itself means that how grim the situation has become, and how easy it is for foreign countries to use social media to manipulate opinion in the targeted countries, and which can swing the results of the elections in any direction they want to. And the very infamous incident of Cambridge Analytica, India was also a kind of victim in this case, because Cambridge Analytica was used in 2010 Bihar elections. They have been harvesting Facebook accounts and using them to derive information about people, which could then be used for targeted campaigns for political parties. So if we move on to something called as the use of social media platforms and misinformation, or we call as fake news, or it could be used as disinformation or information manipulation, whatever you call it. But it has been extensively used in undermining national security. The very first case of Arab Spring, I won't say specific to undermining internal security, but it was definitely used for regime change. Twitter and Facebook were the modalities for people to communicate, for people to arrange protests, for people to let others know that what's happening in these countries, which kind of forced the existing regimes to change. Along with that, social media platforms have been used to kind of drive wedges between our ethnicities, between our religious and I would say, sects. And along with that, the very common thing which we as South Asian nations is that we all are multi-ethnic. We all have so many faiths which have been living in harmony, like since we know. But the way information is manipulated, the way fake news is generated, the way fake news is propagated over things like WhatsApp or Facebook or Twitter, it is unstoppable, and you never know what kind of damages it could do in the longer run. And we have been a victim of it, whether it was Muzaffarnagar, it was Assam, it was Karnataka, West Bengal. At all these states, we have had serious issues of misuse of social media platforms. Even in our neighborhood, even you look at the case of Sri Lanka, where the government had to actually shut down social media platforms. We do use it day in, day out in case of serious law and order problems. First and foremost, knee-jerk reaction is to shut down social media platforms or shut down internet access. But if you look at other cases in and around us, Sri Lanka has rolled out one advisory quite recently, I think in the second week of November. This particular photograph on your bottom left-hand side is from Nepal. Pakistan government has also rolled out a Twitter handle where the government plans to kind of bust fake news. Along with that, after the government kind of called in people from social media companies that what could you do to help us, especially after the incidents of lynching in India. The WhatsApp had rolled out this full page advertisement that what you could do to stop fake news from propagating. So these are the things which are happening all around us, and which have been happening, which it has given a whole new flavor to traditional ways of committing crimes. It has been a problem for investigative agencies because a lot of these activities don't leave any tracks. A lot of these crimes are transnational, where, for example, if you look at the Bangladesh case where the money was taken off, although from Bangladesh bank, but it landed in Philippines and Sri Lanka. So you have this transnational nature where you would need teams, investigatory teams from the police services, from the intelligentsia to look at a specific incident from the point of view of all the countries. So when we have a serious instance, when we have a serious incident, we can have very short-term investigatory teams from all the countries which are involved or which are supposed to be part of the crime, so that we can bring the perpetrators to justice. Along with that, few recommendations that regional organizations are empowered to take the agenda of cybersecurity cooperation. And SARC in this case could adopt cybersecurity as an agenda item. Along with that, we can think of having some intensive expertise exchange in the form of workshops and conferences. India should take lead in this format, and my only apprehension is about SARC losing steam in this case is already we have an open dialogue in BIMSTEC. Last week we did one workshop on cybersecurity for BIMSTEC countries, and out of these 7, already 5 are part of BIMSTEC countries. So if you minus Afghanistan and Pakistan, remaining all of us are part of BIMSTEC. So if BIMSTEC takes the lead in cybersecurity dialogue for the region, then I think it's a loss for SARC. And the more delay we do in terms of adopting cybersecurity as an agenda item in SARC, the more damaging it is for us in future. That's all I had to share. Thank you so much for the patient hearing.